Hello, and welcome to Character Class. Today, I'd like to talk about problematic elements in my TTRPG. It's more likely than you think. Sorry, I had to do the bit. I had to do the bit. Uh, but seriously, I would like to talk about problematic elements in your favorite TTRPG, not in any specific TTRPG, just in general. Because I recently, today, bought a copy of Werewolf the Apocalypse 5th edition and was browsing through it, and I was surprised, pleasantly surprised, at how much of the elements from the older version of Werewolf the Apocalypse that were considered problematic by people, myself included, that are no longer in this edition. They have been removed, and that removal is noticeable to someone who's familiar with the old edition. But in my mind, it is also a seamless removal. Uh, the removal doesn't leave gaping holes in the setting or the system. Now, part of that is probably because of the fact that Werewolf 5th Edition is a uh, reboot. It's not meant to be a continuation of the old, but a standalone product on its own. But part of that is definitely, as somebody who has played the old one and is familiar with it, looking at something that has so many similarities and so many similar landmarks and signposts. Seeing that, it absolutely makes me able to see where things have been removed. And instead of seeing holes, I don't. I see smooth ground. And this has got me thinking about problematic elements and how we as players and how we as storytellers and game masters deal with those problematic elements because they have existed. A lot of our favorite uh, TTRPGs came out in the early 2000s or the 90s or the 80s or even as far back as the 70s. Um, Dungeons and Dragons has had a problem for quite a long time where I know there's a term for it, but I can't remember it off the top of my head. Um, but D&D has this problem of dealing with races as having specific abilities, positive and negative, attached to their race as a whole, rather than being something that can be learned. It's one of the big reasons that I am leaning towards my own homebrew world of dealing with ancestry and heritage rather than the way D&D handles things. Uh, I'm just looking at my cat. He's doing some cute things. Um, but yes, that is a problem that has been around. There has been the problem of in some of these supplemental worlds, Ravenloft had problematic elements with the treatment of what was basically the stand-in for gypsies and the Romani. Um, there has been problematic elements in TTRPGs in relation to indigenous peoples, to queer and LGBTQ characters, to disabled people. Not that long ago, there was someone that I followed on Twitter before I got rid of my Twitter. Um, Which reminds me, I need to find them again and follow them on another social media site. Uh, but they had put out a little thing for free for stats for a combat wheelchair. And lots of people got upset about this because, well, this is a world of magic where you can use a spell to simply regrow a limb. Like, why would anyone be disabled? It can be fixed, and that is missing the point entirely, that representation is important. And if you have a world where all disabilities can be fixed with magic and nobody is disabled, then you are not representing disabled people. And this, I believe, uh, this combat wheelchair supplement that they devised was a way to make representation for disabled people. And on top of that, it was extremely freaking cool. So there's that. Uh, the original werewolf had problems with the entire tribal nature of werewolves, and a lot of the trappings and aesthetics that were put to werewolves very much led them to be kind of analogous to uh, Native Americans, First Nations people, um, indigenous people. Uh, there was even two of the tribes that were named Uktena and Wendigo, both of one of which almost assuredly was connected to Native American. I'm not certain about the Uktena, but the Wendigo, I believe, was. There was also the fact that one of the forms that you could be born as was called. Now, I'm going to say it wrong because uh, I learned to call it Metis, Metis. I believe the actual pronunciation that Werewolf the Apocalypse used was Métis, which is the actual name of a First Nations tribe. And they were using it in the supplemental to represent a forbidden union, someone born of a forbidden union. Like, it's not it's not good. Um, there's a lot of things like that that are in TTRPGs out there, and what you do about it and how you approach it as players and as GMs can say a lot and can telegraph a lot to the other people at your table. Now, I would like to think in this day and age, uh, current year argument in 2023, that people are kind enough and empathetic enough and sympathetic enough to understand that, there are certain things that people can and will get offended by. There are certain things that people find distasteful and don't want to be present in a game that they are taking place in, whether they are running that game or just playing in it. Um, this is one of the reasons that a session zero and lines and veils are so important, because it helps you find these things out. And when you find these things out, you can then make sure not to include them. But there's also a level of just general, you don't need to do this. Like, you can have, in a game like Werewolf or any World of Darkness game, you can have racism. You can have sexism. You can have all manner of crime and debauchery and horrible things happening. It is a world of darkness, after all. there's a certain level of problematic elements which are kind of baked in a manner of speaking, but you can say that this is a world of darkness and this is a world where uh, crime is more widespread, where people are more selfish, and so on and so forth, and still not glorify it. You can still not like make it a spectacle. And this is where I'm kind of thinking uh, people need to think on these things. People need to examine what they find problematic content, what they find to be issues which, don't really have a place, or if they do have a place, uh, it is only after you have talked with everybody else at the table and gotten everybody else's, okay. We're okay to have this in our game. Like we're doing for example, if you're playing a vampire game with intrigue and politics and the immortal kindred uh, running things from the shadows, you're going to have uh, politics and backstabbing in this. You're going to have the kindred lording over things. Kindred can like make people their servants through the power of dominate, through the blood bond, and so on and so forth. This may be a game that you have a talk with everyone around the table and be like, are we okay with, you know, a lack of consent being a theme in this game? Are we okay with uh, slavery being a theme in this game? Because vampires make slaves of things. Now, if everyone is okay with that, you've had a talk about this problematic element at the table, and you are able to move forward. If somebody finds it distasteful, if somebody has had their consent breached in the past and they don't want to deal with that, then you can have this conversation, realize, no, this is going to be an issue. Uh, so we need to take that and put it aside. And this is the proper way to deal with problematic elements in game. It is not something that you look at and just summarily reject because you think it's okay, because you think X, Y, or Z is fine and people are being babies about it. Um, this is not the sort of thing that you go and just, throw a hand up and ignore. You can't just deny that there's anything wrong and that your game is perfect. That's not that's not really how things work. At least that's not how they should work. What should happen is that there should be a discussion, an open, calm, honest discussion about things. And it's fine to enjoy movies and to enjoy a game where you're dealing with darker elements. Like that is one of the benefits of role playing, where you can explore dark and possibly uh, triggering subjects in a safe space, a space that you can at any moment opt out of. But just because you can explore these dark uh, subjects, just because you have that ability, doesn't mean that everybody is going to want to explore these subjects. And if you are forcing others to explore these dark subjects without their consent, that then becomes a problem between players and not a problem between characters. Which is why, when it comes to problematic content, in any way, shape, or form, an open discussion is best to be had. And that ties back to the problematic content that is actually in the books, the stuff that is considered canon. Because one of the things you may remember when I mentioned it earlier, the abomination that your character is an abomination is called a metis. Even though it's supposed to be pronounced another way, I pronounce it metis. Lots of other people who enjoy role playing in werewolf pronounce it metis because we understand that they named this something that they shouldn't have named this back then. But it was the 90s, the very early 90s, and when things were edgy, things were very edgy. So it was not the best option for them to do, but they did it. It's in print, it's in the book. So either we completely change the name or change the pronunciation, uh, and just kind of, move on our merry way. And that's what a lot of people did. They chose to pronounce it metis. Just the same as when it comes to certain other aspects of certain World of Darkness games, we chose to do things a different way, to keep certain rules, to remove certain rules. That is one of the biggest boons to any World of Darkness book, even the old ones. They say that if you, as a GM or your players, agree to do it, to remove any rule, to use any rule you see fit, or not use it, it's up to you. And that, at least, was them realizing that not everything was going to fly with everybody. So they decided to do that. Anyways, I've rambled on for quite a time here, but I do think that when it comes to problematic elements, uh, your best bet is frank, open, and honest communication between everybody that's going to be at the table about it. Simply talk about it, and you can generally come to an agreement as long as people aren't being assholes about it. Anyways, that's going to be it for this episode of Character Class. Thank you all so much for listening to me ramble. I hope I've been helpful. I hope I've been at least a little bit instructive, uh, and that I've possibly educated you a little bit. Who knows? I don't. But thank you all for joining me. As always, if you like what I'm doing, please give that like button a tap. Give the subscribe button a tap as well, if you haven't already, so you can be kept apprised of any videos I put out, and leave a comment down in that comment section. Let me know how you deal with problematic elements in your game. And I don't mean players, I mean the elements of the setting, of the system. Please let me know how you may deal with them. I love hearing from people that watch my videos, and I love chatting. So do all that, and stay safe out there. Continue to hydrate, and I will see you next time. Class is in session. Bye bye.